Hi, Matt Bisogno here again in the blazing sunshine here in Hackney, and welcome to another Gold Nuggets episode. Today I want to look at a couple of things. First of all, I want to share with you the value of not quite after timing, but reviewing results from, well, any day's racing. I think if you do this occasionally, it's really going to help you understand how things that seem incomprehensible in the moment are actually really far more explainable than first meets the eye, and how horse races are probably a little less binary or cut and dry than many people would have you believe, and that's a wonderful thing because it means there's a challenge there. The second thing I want to do today is I want to try to, kind of leading on from the first one, is try to allocate some probabilities to horses in a race, to their chance, based on the information that we have to hand about them. So essentially what we'll end up with is something that people call a tissue, which is a set of prices that we've constructed based on the information that we have around the horses in the race. What you can do with your tissue is you can then compare it with the actual prices and see where there is a discrepancy, and that might be a value betting opportunity. So we're going to cover those things today. Might be quite a long video, so cup of tea or glass of wine, depending on time of day and appetite. And let's get cracking. Okay, so I've just got the results up from yesterday. I'm recording this on Tuesday the 26th, and these are the results from Monday the 25th of April. Now, what I thought I'd do, so obviously, you know, a horse that's 11 to 8 favourite, I don't need to do much to articulate the claims of that horse in the race. So what I propose to do is perhaps to look at the double-digit priced winners and see if we can't find something in their form profile that gave them a bit of a chance. It's important to note that the bit of a chance that we can identify potentially from the form book is not necessarily enough of a bit of a chance to justify us having a bet. So in no way am I suggesting that we would be betting all of these big price winners, or indeed any of them. All I'm trying to demonstrate, and potentially at the risk of labouring this really important point, is that pretty much every horse in a race has some sort of chance, and it's just a question of whether the odds are misaligned with the horse's chance or our perception of the horse's chance. So those are a lot of words. Let's have a look at some actual results now, and we'll start with this 22 to 1 winner, Classy Al at Ayr. This was a 0 to 60 race, kind of basement stuff, and very few horses in here with a chance. I did a place pot at Ayr yesterday, and in this race in the end, which, you know, it kind of looks messy, I ended up banking on the favourite because I just felt that that horse's claims were credible to hit the first three, and very little else had a chance. In other words, it bar Unashamed, it looked a very messy open race with very few horses particularly suited to conditions. As you can see, I just put this on place here, and you can see there's very little green and only bits and pieces of amber. Classy Al had a row of red, but no worse than 3 runs, 3 unplaced runs. So, you know, again, when you're looking at Instant Expert, you need to be more forgiving of a horse where there's sort of 3 unplaced runs. I mean, if we look at Impressor here, for instance, he's run at 6 furlongs in a handicap 8 times prior to yesterday and not made the frame. Now that, for me, would be much more material. Likewise, Stronce's 6 times at the track would be more material than a 1 or a 2 or even a 3. The result In fact, Impressor was second, so got place for the first time. But you're much braver than me if you think backing a horse that's failed to even make the frame 8 times is a 4-to-1 shot over this trip. That's definitely not the percentage chance that I would have allocated to that horse. Getting back to Classy Al, let's have a look at his form profile. And we can see that he's trained by Jim Goldie, who runs a lot of horses at Ayr. Presume he trains pretty close to that place. And you can see that this lad, who had only... So these data here include yesterday's run. So prior to yesterday, he'd only run 7 times, 3 of them in maiden races, the first 3, and then dropped into a handicap. So if I just pop this on handicap for a second, you'll see that he'd actually only had 4 previous runs in handicaps. The first one was over 7 furlongs. Was a 50-to-1 shot that day. Just didn't really show up at all. That was off a mark of 64, and you can see over time how his mark has dropped, not plummeted, but dropped to 54, which he was off yesterday. Now that was only his 5th run in a handicap, and when he'd run at Ayr on good ground like it was yesterday, he'd been beaten 4 lengths and 7 lengths. Not brilliant runs by any stretch, but not terrible either. The truth of it is, this horse wouldn't have been on my radar, not at all. But I guess the takeaway is that horses that have not had many goes, you cannot typecast them as no hopers yet. So this lad, had a few goes in handicaps, wasn't beaten out of sight, had shown a modicum of ability in a really weak race. Again, definitely wouldn't have been one for me, but has a tiny bit of a chance based on what he'd already done and the fact that he could step forward a little bit. The next double-digit priced winner, you can see there were quite a few shorties yesterday, was Sterling Knight, ridden by Geegeez jockey David Probert, up at Windsor. And let's just have a quick look at Sterling Knight. Now, the thing about Sterling Knight is that he is trained by Ed Dunlop. And the thing about Ed Dunlop, in fact, if I just open up Ed's recent form, you can see for yourself that in the days leading up to yesterday, he'd had 2 winners here, and 2 winners here, 20th and 21st, second on the 23rd, second on the 24th, and then yesterday was a serious red letter day. By the time Sterling Knight was winning at 14-to-1, Ed Dunlop had already had 3 winners in the afternoon, including 2 ridden by Marco, another Geegeez rider. And so obviously the yard was in absolutely blitzkrieging form. To put this in some sort of perspective, the 2-year form for the yard is about 9%, and the 30-day form is sort of 18%. And if we went even narrower than that to 7-day form, it would be even higher, as you can see. So the angle there is obviously trainer form. Ed Dunlop was in great form. Again, this is a 3-year-old handicap. Pretty much all of these are capable of stepping forward on what they've done so far. Second start off a layoff, 100 days off. A few things that would have put him in the mix. And if you look at the ratings, he wasn't a million miles away from the top ones, and yet he's a 16-to-1 shot. So arguably a little bit of value. I didn't play in this race, so I didn't have a view on it, and I find 3-year-old handicaps some of the hardest races to deconstruct. Sam Darby, our man, is very good at these kind of races, and I tend to defer to him on such things. Next up was the Thirsk 505, and the winner there was 14's 14 to 1 beat a 25 to 1 and a 22 to 1. And again, I found this a pretty tricky race. It's a 0 to 60 again. It's a 3-year-old handicap again. So we've got a situation where they're most likely moderate horses, and this time of year, you know, in fairness, a few of them have run a good bit on the all-weather, and probably on the turf as well. But with some of them, we don't really know what we're dealing with. The favourite was 6 to 4 in the end, based on a win. I guess a win is probably more than some of these might ever achieve, but at the same time, plenty of the others were capable of stepping forward, and they're a kind of middling bunch, all told. This is a race that way beyond my capabilities, and I couldn't really make a form claim for the winner, McCann King. Blinker's first time is a change, but trainer Roger Feld doesn't have a fantastic record in that context. So in all honesty, this is one that would have left me scratching my head, except that it's a 3-year-old handicap early in the season, and they're a middling, in fact they're not middling, they're a below average bunch. Top one's rated 62. So yeah, that, you can't, regardless of what information you've got, you can't make a case for every single winner. And I would have been struggling. I'd have had 8 bets in that race before probably 10 bets before I'd landed on McCann King, I think. So that's that one. Blair Main, 20 to 1 winner, was much easier to find. The thing with Blair Main, as Instant Expert readily articulates, is that she or he has a pretty credible record against conditions. Now, you can see by the amount of green here, I've got it on the 2-year place, which is my general place spot setup, and flat handicaps, because this is a flat turf race and a handicap. You can see that there is a good bit of green here, but if we sort by market rank, these first 3, who obviously, if you fancy something else, you're getting a price on it because of these first 3 in the betting. They didn't have the greatest record. Now, there will be reasons that they're the price they are, such as scope for improvement and so on. First start in a handicap or second start in a handicap. But there are plenty of horses in this race with who have been there and done it. And a horse like Blair Main, again, this is not it's actually not a bad handicap. It's a 0 to 90 odd. Yeah, top one was 90. Blair Main's rated 84. And unfashionable trainer, but this horse has a really good record at Nace. Had already finished 3rd off 82, 2nd off 81, and 1 off 83 over this course and distance. The win was on good ground, and it was good ground yesterday when the horse won again off 84, so just a pound higher. So like that's the sort of horse that I would be interested in, because by no means is that horse a 20 to 1 shot. And unlike a horse like No More Porter, who would be interesting to a degree as well, his record is based on only the single run over course and distance and a couple of runs here. So it's a green line, but based on less evidence. In the same way that what I was talking about on the negative side, if you've only got 1 or 2 runs to go at, you don't want to get too gung-ho or categorical about it. The same is true on the positive side. If you've only got like 1 or 2 runs in the evidence folder, so in the case of No More Porter, then that's less interesting to me than a horse who's kind of hard knocking in these conditions, a bit like Blair Main, and to a lesser degree Big Gossy as well. And Big Gossy was actually placed in this race, also finished 3rd at 11 to 1. So that was a very gettable 20 to 1 winner there. Dunnington Lad, this was a 2-year-old novice race. Again, certainly not a race that I'd be excited about. The one thing that you'd say about Dunnington Lad is that you'd expect any horse to step forward significantly from first to second start, and in this case, at 14-1, David Evans had a few decent 2-year-old runners this season so far. It certainly wasn't impossible. Again, not one for me, but in a race like this where they've all run either not at all or once, with the exception of Ignac Lamar, who's run twice, you could really expect them to, any of them to step forward any amount. It's definitely not a race that I'd be playing. And so in that context, he was beaten 7 lengths on his debut, but his debut was at Newbury. He missed the start, dwelt start in Ria. So, it kind of all, he'd lost his race at the start there. And then second time out, with the experience on his side, this is what I'm talking about, first to second run, he made all. He bounced out here, having completely fluffed it here. So, that the difference between those two starts is probably most of the distance that he was beaten. If you fluff the start, it's going to cost you five lengths plus. If you bounce out, then you're gaining that off some of your rivals. So, not for me, but we always need to be mindful that a horse can step forward significantly from first to second run, particularly if it was all at sea on debut out of the stalls. So that was Dunnington Lad. Anno Sierra at Naas was the next one up. I thought this one was probably, I wasn't betting at Naas last night, but I thought this one was probably overpriced as well. So if we look at the market, you can see that we've got a Joseph O'Brien and a Noel Mead at the top. They're both handicapped debutants, as was Anno Sierra. And if we look at J Pobbs' HC1 record, his first start in a handicap, 11.5%, not bad, but only a little bit. An impact value of 1.22 is not massively above the crowd, and considering the firepower he has, that's probably a little bit underwhelming. So he was certainly 5-2, definitely over bet. Now, he was a last time out winner. He can obviously step forward again and win the race. Of course he can, but he's up against a bunch of unexposed horses, plenty of them making their debuts this season, and all of them at least double the price that he was. In the case of Anno Sierra, we can see that he too was a winner last time. Let's have a quick look at that. He was a winner in a 6 furlong maiden 3 months ago. Comes here, trainer record, first start in a handicaps, had a winner from 14 starters. Percentage of rivals beaten pretty close to 50. None of that terrible for a known, not a no-name trainer, but for a lesser known trainer than someone like O'Brien. Last time out winner, gone in and won again 3 times and placed 8 times. Again, below the average, but always at square prices, hence the actual over expected figure above 1. Percentage of rivals beaten 60%. Win profit of 14 units, and now that's add another 11 to that. So this horse 4-2-2-1, obviously very far from impossible to find that winner. What else have we got? Emerald's Pride at Thirsk. This race was a relatively low grade maiden race for horses in bands C and D. It had an odds-on favourite, Matisse, who had run a nice race at York in May of last year, but not really done a huge amount since then. Ran okay on debut on soft ground at Ponty this season, but kind of didn't really go on last year, and definitely another one that I wouldn't have wanted to be backing at the price it was, although in a race as limited as this, probably wasn't massively underpriced. Against it, you've got a couple of horses that, you know, had gone close in recent times in No Guts, No Glory and 12th Night. And Emerald's Pride, who was actually the 4th favourite in the race, despite being 14-1. And you can see had been in the frame in 3 of 4 races last season. Again, it's a case of these, you know, 3-year-old first time out. How has the horse grown since 2? Hasn't run for 215 days. That's 7 months. You know, lots of imponderables, not just about this horse, but about many in the field. And yet, here is a bit of form. You know, 3 times demonstrated form over 5 furlongs. Step up to 6. Hadn't suited. First time in a handicap last season. Back in non-handicap company. And yeah, you know, again, not impossible. Not for me, but not impossible. In a race where, you know, plenty of them were in that, although they could be something, the market suggested that they probably were not all that much. So it was, you know, there weren't a huge amount of horses in this race with a chance. The winner was one of those with a bit of a chance. You can see on the top speed figures, if you like, was second choice. On Racing Post ratings was third choice. On our SR figures was down the list a little bit. But still, you know, if you follow those ratings, then you may have backed that horse at 14-1. So that's that one. Anything else? Not really. Oh, I just wanted to quickly show you this Mullicash Buzz. He was 9-1, so not quite double figure price, but there was a thing about him, like, so when I was just looking at this race, this is again at Naas, over a mile, very little in the race. Maybe Yaya Baby, obviously 40-1, that would have definitely caught my eye. I'm not sure how that ran, actually. Pretty moderately, 12th. But you know, outran market expectations without getting anywhere near troubling the judge. But the thing about this race was the pace map. So here's a race with, you know, a big field, and we can see that in these conditions, leading has been a good strategy, and we can see from this graphical pace map that there's only one horse that is projected to go forward. That's old Mullicash Buzz here, and we can see the pace prediction is probable lone speed. And if we look at the result, the in running comment, we can see made all, increased tempo over 2 out, ridden 2 furlongs out, kept on strongly. So, you know, that again, that's one where if you're a follower of pace and or draw angles, you can see that his run style really set up for this race, when obviously other horses can change their run style, but the projection was that these were all kind of midfield or hold up horses, and he's the one that wants to go forward, and got an easy and won well. It won by half a length and 2 1/4 in the end. So you know, again, these are things that we can identify ahead of time. So that's enough on that. That's I hope that's kind of instructive. Now, you know, obviously it looks like massive after timing, and that's not really the point. The point is that very few horses, in fact, basically no horses, have a 0% chance to win. Quite a few have a very small single figure percentage chance to win. But the ones that we've looked at there, pretty much all of them, with perhaps 1 or 2 exceptions, you could make at least a reasonable case for. And that's not to say, you know, it bears repeating again, it's not to say that I'm suggesting you would have backed those, because in most races you can make a reasonable case for most of the horses, and then it's just a matter of, you know, weighing up the pros and cons of each one. That's the key here, is that I'm trying to project, to convey that almost every horse in almost every race has some kind of a chance, and our job is to work out whether its price properly reflects that or not. And in the next part of this Golden Nuggets episode, we'll look at a race and we'll try to attribute prices and probabilities to horses. We'll try to create a tissue based on the information we have in Geegeez Gold. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that we've got the in the race card options that we have displayed my ratings. So I typically have this hidden, but occasionally I add it in order to do an exercise like this. So I'm just going to quickly update that. Now if I go to the race card, I'm going to go to a race tomorrow. Let's choose Pontefract, I guess. Looking at the field sizes and the age groups and the distance. Not a lot of runners there tomorrow, which probably suits actually, because otherwise this video will go on for hours. Let's try the 3:10 race. It's a 4-year-old plus mile and a quarter handicap, class 5, 7 runners declared. And you can see on the race card I now have this calculator icon. What this does is it gives me a space to enter some comments, a rating if I want to, and my odds. Essentially calculate my odds based on a rating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through, before I go into the individual form, I want to look at the shape of the race. So I want to kind of get a feel for the runners and their current level of form. So we can see that although it's early in the season, most of them have been running on the all-weather, I presume. They've had a few runs already anyway, with a couple of exceptions. In fact, just Spantic yet to run, and Carragillihi, if that's how you say it, second off a layoff. It's a very quick look at the Instant Expert, and we can see there's some green and some quite big red numbers there actually, so that's interesting. From a pace perspective, where horses that lead over this mile and a quarter, I don't know if you read Dave Renham's piece yesterday. He actually flagged the mile and a quarter at Pontefract as a material draw bias course and distance, just because of the relentless turning nature of it. So if you're on the lead and in front, which these couple of horses here have a chance to do, and potentially Swinton Noon if Erica can get him across, essentially you're not going to travel as wide, or you're not going to be in behind horses on this turning track. And you can see that horses that led have won nearly 30% of the time. I mean, that's a big old number, and they win more than twice as often as those in behind, and have got a very solid return to a pound level stake. So that's definitely a factor to consider. Again, if we look at the draw here, I'm just going to put this on 6 to 8 runners, just going to narrow it a little bit and make it actual draw, percentage of rivals beaten, and you can see that low draws are strongly favoured, and actually it's something that the market hasn't fully cottoned onto, although it may have done now, because this data runs back to 2009. Looking further down, if we look at the again, I tend to favour percentage of rivals beaten for draw stuff. If we look at the constituent stalls, we can see that inside stalls have fared best. And then on the old heat map on percentages of rivals beaten, well, it's a pretty unambiguous story. Low or lead, and if you look at lead, even it's 71%, 66%, 60%. So this is optimal. But if there's a little bit of a pace skirmish, then sitting off that pace might not be too bad either. But there's a very clear good place to be and not so good place to be. Albeit that the caveat is that we've got 41 races in the sample, so it's not a huge sample, but nor is it a tiny one. It's definitely something that I'll be working with. So I'm marking up low and lead, and I'm marking down kind of higher draws that are weighted with, because it looks like it might not suit them this time. So let's just quickly factor that into things. And we put this on draws here, and we just have a look at the pace. If I put the heat map on the pace tab, you see it's sorted by draw order, and we've got this kind of similar thing here. So I'm going to mark up. Let me just look at the data a second. I think one or both of these two inside draws will go forward, and I think Erica will try to go forward on Swinton Noon as well. These look likely to be held up, and what would you know looks likely to be probably mid-div towards the back, simply because there are so many other horses that want to go forwards. So let's work on that basis. Right, so I'm just going to make some notes in the boxes here. So Spantic, good draw, may go forward, and I'm going to copy and paste that into Carragillihi, and I'm going to say moderate draw may go forward there for Swinton Noon. You can see I've actually got some previous notes for this horse, which I was using as an example horse way back when. Interesting. I'm in the same way that I'm marking these up, I'm going to mark these ones down. Quote line, bookmark, and love your work, because I perceive that the draw and pace or run style scenario is going to be against them. Hold up, not favoured. Let's go with that. And the same for bookmark, and the same for love your work. Midfield, question mark, probably not ideal. Okay, so that's all I want to do on draw and pace, and I'm just kind of, putting ticks and crosses in boxes essentially. And the next ticks and crosses will come from the instant expert. Again, if we sort it by the draw, we can see where the horses are berthed and what their past performance profile in comparison with today's conditions is. So Spantic has run 4 times at 1.25 miles in handicaps in the last 2 years, and I mean, he's been whacked out of sight each time. I'm just going to have a look at Spantic's overall form profile, because that is really unpromising. You can see that he did win in September last year over 1.75 miles, and here he's over 1.25 miles. If he tries to lead, I think there will be quicker horses, and if they go no pace, I think they'll go a fair pace, but if they go no pace, I think he's going to get outpaced. His form at 1 mile and 10 furlongs is really not good, and his form over further clearly is better. Let's just check his all-weather form, see what he's done there. So he's 1/10 at Newcastle. I imagine they went quick that day. So a quick look at the sectionals there. Yeah, you can see he was far enough back, 7 lengths back. They went very fast early, so that set up for a closer, or essentially a plodder, which I suspect he is. So that suited him there. They might go quick here. Whether they go quick enough, I'm not at all sure. But they might go quick. He was second again over the Newcastle 10 furlongs, and again they went quick early, and that set up. But even there, he was well enough beaten in the end. I think on balance, I'm against Spantic, particularly on his flat turf form. So I'm going to add some notes here. 1 over 14 furlongs turf, too slow, has won in pace meltdowns, though that was when held up. I'm not sure if Ben has ridden before. He has. Let's just do that and then put the jockey on there. You can see that Ben has won on him actually, and held him up that day, and has actually in the 6 times he's ridden the horse, he's never gone forward with him. So perhaps he'll let the others stride on. Not sure at all about that. May go forward. Okay. Roger Fell's form. I mean, obviously the jockey is a positive. In terms of the trainer's form, trainer is in good form at the moment, or having plenty of winners anyway. His PRB is not great, but they are winning, and they're actually not placing as much as the last year. So he may just be getting some good variance at the moment. I'd be a little bit wary of those numbers, even though they look quite rosy. But certainly you couldn't say he's in bad form anyway. Just not necessarily in good form. Let's have a look at Carragillihy. One more thing that I should mention with Spantic, and indeed a few of the others, is that you can see he's got red 2 there. That's my report angles. And if I click that, you can see what those angles are. The trainer-jockey combination in the last 5 years is a very strong combination, and jockey stats last 5 years. Obviously, Ben, as I've said, is a jockey positive, so I'm going to put a TJ positive as well. TJC5, course 5 year. Okay. Let's go on to Carragillihy now, and we can see again we've got a jockey positive for Jason Hart in the last year. Very good jockey, as is Ben. Sire snippets, interesting. The sire of Carragillihy is New Bay. I mean, very top sire in the making. Out of a Dalakani mare, so ought to stay this trip very well. You can see he's been running over further. Actually been running over and getting beaten over further in small fields. Has dropped down the handicap steadily. Is 69 today, having been 74. Not exactly a gimme, and hasn't been looking like winning at any point. He's led in 3 of these races and got beat in small fields each time. This is another small field race, shorter trip. I'm not sure if just got outstayed. Headed 2 out there over 1.6 miles. Headed 2 out over 1.5 miles. Headed over 2 out over 1.5 miles. So it might be that the drop back in trip is a positive. New Bay, certainly the Dalakani mare would imply stamina, but the New Bay probably more speed than stamina. So it might be a good move to step back in trip. Second start off a layoff, I think, is material, so I'm going to add that in there. Dropping back in trip, having not got home over further. Jockey positive. What else do we have here? Yeah, sire positive. I'm not massive on sire positives, particularly when they've had a few goes, although when they're doing something a little different like this lad is, then it's kind of, it's a bit more material. What do we know about his form chance? he has run once before at the track, and he was a winner when he led over 1.5 miles. Led early, headed but close up. Led again, going easily over 2 out. Pushed along and went clear. Over 1 out, eased inside the final half furlong. Won readily. That was in a field of 9. He's in a field of 7 this time. So again, kind of similar setup. Also won here last summer. He won when he led over 1.5 miles at Ripon. So I mean, that's an important thing to say. You know, some horses are winners and others are not. This lad has won 2 of 11 on the flat. If we look at handicaps only, he's won 2 of 9. And he kind of is always thereabouts, and he generally leads. So he's got a good draw here, and I think he's got a good chance to lead, and we'll see how long he can stay there. Like I say, he's dropped down the handicap a little bit, which won't hurt him. Nice, solid win record. 2 from 9 on turf. Handicaps. That'll do for Carrigillahy. Actually, I'll just quickly check the trainer form. And the trainer, who runs a lot of horses, as you can see, in the last year, he ran nearly 1,500 runners. 10% strike rate overall. Last 30 days, only 5.5. Last 14 days, up to 7.3. Tim Easterby is a trainer that I happen to know. Definitely warms them up steadily at the start of the season. So, second start, we should expect Carrigillahy to be a bit more forward than he was first time up. Second off. Oops, I put that in the wrong place there. Let's go. I've already put that second start off layoff. Positive for the trainer. Okay, that's enough for Carrigillahy. Quote Line Direct, going to be held up, which is not a favoured run style. Quote Line Direct is being ridden by Sylvester de Souza. Now, Sylvester does often go forward on horses. I don't think he's ridden this horse before. Just going to put it on jockey again, and yeah, you can see there he's not ridden the horse before. So that'd be interesting. I mean, I think he will know that he's got trap 3, and that could be. So I'm going to put might go forward, because the horse is actually. The horse has run 60 times, and you can see that I've just sorted this by run style, and it led only once in 60 starts, and that was in a maiden hurdle over 2 years ago. So, and prominent runs as well, almost all back in time. So this horse is habitually not a forward goer, with a few others around that generally are. I think even if Sylvester wants to go forward, I'm not sure he'd be able to. So I'm inclined to think that this horse will be will have to be weighted with. Cheek Piece's first time is interesting for a horse that's run so many times already. You know, a 60 race veteran getting the cheekies on for the first time. We can actually just have a look at whether that's a material factor. So if I just put this on tomorrow, Pontefract, and if I go to Cheeky's first time, you can see that Mickey Hammond in the last 2 years has applied the Cheek Pieces first time 21 times, still waiting for a winner and barely a place as well. So it you know, it's only 20 runs. It's not terminal, but it doesn't look a positive anyway. So I'm CP1, not a strong trainer angle. We can also see that the trainer has a red 14 and the jockey has a red 14. So let's just have a look at trainer and jockey form. In the last 14 days, Mickey Hammond has had 20 runners, no winners, but 30% place rate is actually above his historical place rate, and the percentage of rivals beaten at 48% is also above historical. In the last month, the numbers are well above historical. So it'd be a slight niggle. What's interesting is that the horse, as you can see there, the 7 minus days. This is the trainer angle, the report angle here. When he runs a horse back within 7 days, they often win. Now you do tend to find that trainers run horses back to run under a penalty before they get reassessed by the handicapper if they've won. So you've got to be a little bit careful with these numbers. But the fact that this horse is running back so quickly is probably a positive. Running back quickly. Oops, positive. What about Sylvester? Why is he having a bad time of it? He actually is having a tough time of it, which is, a real shame for a jockey of his ability. I don't think he's getting the rides that he once was. If we just have a quick look at, see the sort of prices the horses he's been riding recently are. I mean, he's been a bit unlucky, second at short prices. 1 on a 5 to 2. Actually, they're not. He's been on quite a few fancied horses. It just hasn't quite worked out for him. You can see how many times he leads and it races prominently. Sylvester is rarely found out the back. But he just seems to be out of form at the moment, so that's gonna be a negative for me. I think that's enough to say on Quote Line Direct. Bookmark is a trainer change, interesting, and features on the trainer snippets as a positive indicator. So one of the things to note about a trainer change, of course, is that it might involve a tactics change. So the fact that this horse has been held up recently, that could change because the trainer decides, well, actually I want to go forward. So I'm going to put TC plus, shorthand for trainer change positive. I've also got a query tool angle here, firm flat sire markup. So new approach is a sire that whose progeny tend to handle that fine. If we had a bit more time, I'd show you that on the profiler, but you'll have to take my word for that or do your own research. You can see that overall it's slightly below average on the PRBs. When you get these massive sample sizes, they tend to gravitate towards or very close to 50. So rarely see something massively outlying there. What else on the trainer side of things? Lochnan is running about his normal average, so nothing especially noteworthy there. Trainer change is a plus. Offer layoff, not great. Below average on all of those things, so that'll be a markdown after 6 months off. So TC plus, layoff negative. We should actually have a look at the horse's form, shouldn't we? Bookmark, we can see one here, one by 17 lengths over course and distance in a maiden handicap. Not really sure what to make of that. He also won at Chester a week later of 65 over 10 furlongs on good ground, and he raced in rear there, which wouldn't be a favoured run style. You can see he's overcome the run style bias at both Pontefract and Chester, which would be, both be fairly strong forward draw bias tracks in smallish fields. Unfortunately, actually Chester, we may have the Chester run with a sectional time. Unfortunately, Pontefract is not is not one of the tracks, and we can see here, yeah, so they went even, then they went quick in the middle and went quite slow at the end, so they probably went overly fast in the middle of the race, which helps a hold-up horse. You know, they just the ones in front of him just kind of come back a little bit, and you can see here that he was 8 lengths down at the third call point. In actual fact, most of 8 lengths down at the second call point, and then ended up winning. So he's made up nearly 10 lengths in this last section. That's quite remarkable, particularly on the back of him winning by 17 lengths the time before. Let's just have a little bit more of a look at this. So that was then, and then what happened after that? This is sorted by run style. There we go. That's by date, right? So there were these 2 runs, and then fortnight later went back to Chester, reassessed at 71, held up. You can see that the pace of the race was against him here, even and fast. So they went steadily enough. He's made up ground. He was 4.5 back, and he made up 3 lengths against an even pace where they've quickened at the end. And you know, whereas before when he won, they'd gone too quick in the middle and then they'd stopped quite slow at the end. This time they'd gone not slow but even, and you know, had a little bit left to quicken up, so that caught him out a bit. The Kempton run, his sole subsequent run, Kempton doesn't really suit hold-up horses as a rule. Again, we haven't got the sectionals for this, unfortunately, yet. And you can see he kept on, but no impression inside final furlong. He is an interesting runner, in spite of the run style. You know, he normally he'd be a negative, but that massive win at the track, huge margin, CD score, reprised at Chester next time. Race not run to suit at Chester after that at Chester, or Kempton after that. So basically this lad needs a bit of pace to run at, and I think he's got a chance to get that here. Again, so what we've got is we've got to weigh up with each of these horses the pros and the cons, the pluses and the minuses, and try and then aggregate that and quantify that in relation to the other horses. It's a bit of a challenge, but a fun one, and we'll do that in a minute. Let's have a look at what would you know for Nigel Tinkler. He's had 6 starts in where are we? He's had 6 starts in flat handicaps, and not been in the frame yet, but he has run. He was only beaten 3 there. He was only beaten 5 there. He was beaten 2.5 there. So he's been there or thereabouts. Most recently in Class 4. This is a Class 5 race, so a drop in grade. He's off 67 now. Has won off 64 in the past. That was over 9 furlongs in a Class 6 race where he carried all the weight, so he would presumably top weight that day. Slight niggle, I think the class, and not so much the distance, because all the runs at the distance have been, and pretty much all of them have been in this grade or higher. I think the class is the thing. I'm just not sure he's good enough. So I'm going to put class question mark. I have got a firm flat sire markup for Lope de Vega, the brilliant Lope de Vega. You can see, like, talking about these PRB figures for sires where you've got massive sample sizes, you can see that Lope de Vega is at 55. Anything above sort of 53 on these big sample sizes is a little bit material. Lope de Vega's a definite markup sire. He's definitely, you know, unfortunately everybody knows that. but you can see from the impact values that his horses win, his progeny win a good bit more often than average. But not this chap, whose overall form is uninspiring, mostly on all weather and soft ground last time. Yeah, £7 claimer. I don't know much about Sophie Clements. I do know that she hasn't ridden a winner in the last year. And I don't know if she's never ridden a winner. She has never ridden a winner to this point, so I'm sure that will change. But it's definitely, she's up against Sylvester Sousa, Jason Hart, and Ben Curtis here, and it's not a positive for the horse that that she has such that it has such an inexperienced rider. For all that she claims £7, which will definitely help. So I'm afraid that's going to be a jockey negative on this occasion, claiming the 7. Trainer, yeah, doing okay. Most of these numbers are around where they would be, maybe slightly down on percentages. I probably a little bit down on his chance, on his current form. Jockey negative, trainer slight negative. I mean, I'm not really enthusiastic about this boy's chance. Let's have a look at Swinton Noon. Erica Parkinson, who has ridden a good number of winners actually. I think she's got a bit of a chance to get across from the wide draw. Probably only 2. These guys, if they do what they normally do, Bookmark's a bit of a wild card because of the trainer switch, but I think Erica has a chance to get this one over. Let's have a look. She led on him last time from stall 7 of 8, so that was a good effort. Only beaten a length at the line. That was Theo. Yeah, that's Erica's only ride was there, or recent ride was there. So that's so I wouldn't be too worried about that. She is a good rider, as I say. She's got a very good record in the last year from really limited chances. Look at her win P&L and each way. Her numbers are good. She's a talented young rider. So and claims 7 obviously. So jockey slight positive. Mick Appleby obviously trains a lot of horses. Great trainer. Great all weather. Permanently the all weather champion trainer. Not quite such a good strike rate on the turf. You can see there his flat turf is about 10%, whereas he's 11.5 and more in all weather circumstances. Although his figures in the last year are good, much better actually. You may know that Geegeez have had horses with Mick, and we may actually have another one very soon. We've got our eye on one in the sales this week, and we'll see if that comes off. But that's a measure of how I rate his ability to train horses, to keep them on the boil, and to improve them and find winning opportunities for them, and not just me, lots of other people. So the trainer's definitely at least a small uplift. What we better look at the form of the horse, hadn't we? Do tend to forget to do that sometimes. Not had a million goes over these conditions. 4 runs unplaced at this trip. Pretty scabby portfolio, in fairness, at Windsor and Bath and Chester. Haydock was better, but that was a very small field. That was the only time Erica rode. Led at a steady pace. Headed inside the final furlong. So, interesting. That was off 67, off 59 now. Erica again can claim the 7. So, yeah, not sure. I mean, on form, not probably good enough, but dropping down the weights and conditions largely expected to suit, particularly the draw and run style. Finally, we've got Love Your Work, who has been busy and has been busy making hay. Second first. Well, that's good going. And when you consider that he's only rated 69 now, having started this sequence off 67, granted, I suspect he's got a in fact, I'm sure I can see that he's got a separate all-weather mark from his turf mark. You see his last all-weather win came off 73, and then he turned up 9 days later on the turf off 63, ran second, only went up a pound, won, went up 5 for that. So he's still 4 pounds below his all-weather mark, if you believe that he is now as good on the turf as he is on the all-weather. And if you do believe that, he's very well handicapped. He's got a hot form race in his back catalogue here. You can see this. In actual fact, you can't see that run. It's down here somewhere. It's more than 6 runs back. But you can see from the win percentages of more recent runs that they're decent. So he's been running in races where the horses behind have got ability. Excuse me. And he too clearly has ability. His win record is actually quite impressive. Love Your Work. He's 8 from 48. 7 of them on the all-weather, so that's why he had that kind of differing turf and all-weather mark. If we look at his flat form, this is a flat race, you can see that really he'd done very little prior to the trainer switch. He's had plenty of trainers, but the switch to Rebecca Menzies, second and first, he never run second in 13 previous turf starts, so definitely improved for the trainer switch. The run style is definitely a concern. Again, the caveat is if they go too quick, that will play to his strengths a little bit. But he at Doncaster it's quite a long straight. At Beverley it's uphill and fairly long from the turn in. So it is uphill. It is uphill at Pontefract, but it's not quite such a long straight. And I just wonder if the turning nature of it will be ideal. Nevertheless, I respect the progression under this trainer. So has progressed for trainer switch, admirable win record. Coming back off just 6 days off, last time out winner 25% for Rebecca. That's remarkable. Yeah, all strong stuff. Form has been working out. Jockey, yeah, a little bit meh. Although obviously the TJ combo with Rebecca has produced better results. So where exactly does that leave us all? Well, we've got to assimilate all of these pros and cons now and try to come up with some odds. Now what I'm going to do is there are 7 runners, so I'm going to start by making them all 6 to 1. Oops. And the reason I am doing that, as you will see in a second, is that makes the total 100%. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to try and rate these horses. I want to try and give each horse a price that means that the total sums up to around 100%. You know, we're not dealing with nuclear physics here. Approximations are fine. So in the case of Spantic, God, that was a while back now. He's got a good draw. He might go forward. He's been running over further, though has won in pace meltdowns when held up. The jockey is a plus, the TJ course record is a plus. Where would I put him in the hierarchy in this race? I think I'd probably put him behind Carragillihi, in front of Quoteline Direct. I'm really not sure about Bookmark. It depends how fit he is off the layoff. But probably behind him, in front of What Would You Know? Maybe slightly in front of Swinton Noon, and slightly behind Love Your Work. So I think I'm probably going to leave Spantic at 6-1 for now. Carragillihi, I know I want him to be a bit shorter. I think he's got a lot of positives in his corner. Yeah, so I'm going to make him a 4-1 chance for now. And this is an iterative process, so these are serious guesstimates, and then we'll see where we get to in a minute. And you can see that now I've changed that, my total has gone above 100%. Not a drama. I think Quoteline Direct, yeah, just there are a few negatives about him, in spite of him running back quickly, and a question mark about the cheek pieces first time. He's had 60 goes, a bit late to be reaching for the cheek pieces, in my opinion. I'm going to make him 10-1 for now. Bookmark, if he's fit, he's really interesting. I think like those 2 wins last year were 17 lengths even in a bad race is impressive, and then to make up that ground late at Chester was also very impressive. He is going to need some pace to run at. The shape of the race with Swinton and Spantic and Carragillihi, and possibly Bookmark, possibly Quoteline Direct if Sylvester gets his way. Yeah, I think he's got. I quite like him. What Would You Know? I don't like the run style. He's older than the others. The jockey's out of. The jockey is not out of form. The jockey is just inexperienced. The trainer is slightly out of form. I'm not sure about the class level. I mean, this guy's this one probably wins, but definitely not for me. So I'm going to make that one 14-1. Swinton Noon, I think, has a chance. Should sit handy. Erica's will probably try to lead, I think, and depending on how the 2 inside, whether Jason or Ben want to go forward. I'm not sure whether Ben can, because this thing's looks like it might be a slow old boat. This one, the 2 probably goes forward, and I think Swinton will have his work cut out. Erica will have her work cut out. Probably about the right price. Yeah. And then finally, Love Your Work. Again, I've got hold up not favoured there, but if they go quick enough, then that brings him into the race. He's going to have to come round the field, drawn 7, drawn on the outside, hold up, probably going to drop in, going to have to pass them all. That's a negative to me as well. I'm sure he will be shorter, but for me, I think if there's going to be a closer that wins, it's probably going to be Bookmark. And on my tissue, I'm going to make him a bit longer. I'm sure he will be a shorter price in the betting than that. So my total is 95%. So I actually need to, knock a few of these into shape. Spantic, he probably is a bit slow. I'm going to make him 7-1. I'm going to make Carragillihi 7-2. I'm going to make Quoteline 12-1. I'm going to make Bookmark 7-2. I'm going to leave What Would You Know where it is. I'm going to make Swinton 5 to 1. And I'm going to make Love Your Work a little bit shorter. 7 to 1. There we go. So that's 100% book now. So, what I'm also going to do is save all this detail. And at the time of recording this, I haven't seen a price for the race, so I'm going to. This could be very embarrassing. I'm going to see if I can find a price for this race. It's 3:10 at Ponty tomorrow, and see how far out of whack with the early prices, at least mine are. So there's one book, and Love Your Work is favourite. Like I say, I was confident that he'd be much shorter in the book, but I think he'd probably drift a bit because he has got that wide draw and hold up run style, which is definitely not suited here. And his overall turf record is not great. Quote Line Direct is second favourite. Well, one of us has got this wrong. I think he'll drift a lot. He's yeah, he wouldn't be for me. Carragilla, he is 9 to 2. I have him at 7 to 2. A little bit of value there potentially. Bookmark is 5 to 1, and I've got him at 7 to 2, so he'd be interesting. But I'd want to see a bit of money for Bookmark. I'd want to know that the horse was fit. I'd rather take 4 to 1. I'd rather take 4 to 1 with the blue across the line than 5 to 1 or 11 to 2 with the pink, because I just want to know that that horse is fit. I wouldn't normally be bothered by the blue and pink, especially. But in that case, you know, when there's a fitness question mark, it's definitely something that I'm interested in. Swinton Noon, I have at about 5 to 1. They've got about 13 to 2. Spantic and What Would You Know, bigger prices, as I have What Would You Know a bigger price and Spantic also a bigger price. So I'm basically miles out of whack with Quote Line Direct and Love Your Work. And I've explained the reasons why I disagree with those prices. It's only one book. It's a very early market. They're betting to, as you can see there, 121%. So they're not taking any chances. It'd be interesting to see when the market kind of, you know, when more bookmakers are up and the prices start to be bet. It'd be interesting to see how this market shapes up against my market. And regardless of who's right and who's wrong, the exercise is definitely about, you know, gathering the information and then assimilating it in a tissue format like this. And I hope that's been useful. It's quite a long video today, but this is a really good exercise for you to do yourself. Obviously, if you're doing it on your own, it's not going to take as long as this. It takes as long as you've got time or as you want to make, but you won't have to be talking about it while you're doing it, so it should be a lot quicker. It's good discipline to do this from time to time. It's also really good discipline to look at a day's results and look at some of the, you know, ostensibly less explainable winners and go and see what was in their form profile that might have advertised them ahead of time. As I said before, that's not to think, oh, I should have backed that one, but rather to have a greater appreciation of the holistic chances in a race. You know, every runner has a bit of a chance, and the more you do that, the more you'll be able to highlight and understand and articulate and quantify the chances, the prospects of each horse in a race. Okay, very long video today. Hopefully some good stuff in there for you. This is Matt Bisogno saying thank you very much for watching and goodbye for now.